We're good? And we're live.
And here we go. All right, we're ready. We're ready.
Commissioner, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you everybody for being here today. As many of you remember, back before I was elected Florida's Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services, I worked to help provide patient access to medical marijuana across our state. As you also may recall, when I ran for office I hold today, I had not just one, but two of our major banks shut down my accounts due to my cannabis advocacy. Access to financial services is just one of the many barriers facing state legal cannabis industry and medical marijuana patients due to conflicts between state and federal cannabis laws. This includes barriers to access of housing, employment opportunities, VA care, and other federal services. Discrimination unique to medical marijuana patients and not any other patient who have legal prescriptions for other medications, all due to federal government's continued misguided cannabis prohibition. No patient should have to choose between their medicine and employment, or a roof over their head, or access to capital, or their constitutional rights. While we continue to call for full legalization to resolve the many issues it caused by the federal government's irrational, inconsistent, and incoherent cannabis policies, we are here today to announce that we are filing suit against the federal government, against the U.S. Department of Justice and the ATF, over the violation of patients' Second Amendment rights due to federal law deeming it illegal for a medical marijuana card holder to purchase or possess a firearm. To be clear, I am in no way challenging the federal government's right to enact reasonable gun regulations that protect the public. In fact, I believe the federal government needs to take more common sense actions to keep families and communities safe from the senseless and horrific gun violence that has tragically impacted our state over the years. And my record speaks for itself on this. But denying the Second Amendment rights of medical marijuana patients is not about safety. There is no evidence that medical marijuana use makes individuals more dangerous or violent. What this is, plain and simple, is yet another violation of medical marijuana patients' rights to do discrepancies in cannabis laws, pushing for them to have state legal activity without a reasonable basis to do so, punishing them. Joining me in this lawsuit are three Floridians who, like me, support common sense gun regulations that keep firearms out of the hands of dangerous individuals. All three have been personally impacted by this prohibition and discrepancy in Florida and state laws. Vera Cooper, who I'm excited to have with me here today from Milton, became a state legal medical marijuana patient in 2016. As she runs the day-to-day operations of her family business, Cooper Plumbing, she often finds herself running regular bank deposits and or working late nights in the office alone. She decided she needed to purchase a handgun and get a concealed carry permit for her personal protection, given those circumstances and following threats from a former employee. Unfortunately, she was denied the ability to purchase a handgun after she felt that she had answered yes to question 21E on the ATF form 4473. Otherwise, she felt she risked committing a felony offense for lying on the form. The ATF question states, are you an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or any other controlled substance, with the warning that the use or possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized or decriminalized for medical or recreational purposes in the state in which you reside. The same thing happened to Nicole Hansel, who is also here with us today. Nicole served our country in the U.S. Army Reserves, where she was deployed to Afghanistan. She found cannabis provided relief for her PTSD and severe anxiety, where other medications made her feel worse. As a single mother of 3 young children who runs her own business, Nicole sought a firearm for personal protection as she manages her business and to protect her family at home. Yet even as a veteran, she had her purchase denied after answering yes to the same question on the ATF form as Ms. Cooper. This brings us to Neil Franklin, who wasn't able to be with us here today but is joining in this lawsuit. Neil recently moved to Naples after 34 years as a law enforcement officer, working in drug and criminal enforcement, as well as domestic violence investigation units, retiring as a major from the Maryland State Police, where Nicole and Vera are currently medical marijuana card holders who are prohibited from purchasing firearms. As a retired law enforcement officer, Neil maintains a national concealed carry permit. But even though he qualifies for the state's medical marijuana program confirmed by the Florida Department of Health, Neil felt that he had to opt out of the medical use registry as he's concerned that even the lawful use of cannabis in Florida will disqualify him from continuing to maintain his national concealed carry license and from purchasing future firearms. Qualifying patients like Neil should not have to choose between access to their state constitutional rights to cannabis as medicine or their federal constitutional Second Amendment rights. The current policies and current patients like Vera and Nicole should not have to have their Second Amendment rights denied, but current federal policy forces them to choose between those rights and their medicine, or face the threat of a felony charge for lying on a federal form. They are not alone in facing this dilemma due to conflicts between federal and state cannabis laws. And this lawsuit seeks to right that wrong of the federal firearm prohibition for medical marijuana card holders in Florida and to 37 other states that have legalized medical marijuana. But this is just one of the many areas where medical marijuana patients face discrimination or access issues due to being prescribed a state legal medicine. And I unfortunately see this through my entire career as a past public defender, as a medical marijuana advocate and patient, and now the Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services overseeing our state's concealed weapons licensing program. We hope to see the federal government take action to address this violation of medical marijuana patients' constitutional rights, and to also take action to legalize cannabis overall to end the harmful discrepancies between state and federal laws that continue to harm patients, imprison tens of thousands of Americans, and stifle the growth of the cannabis industry to the detriment of our economy. I want to thank again Vera and Nicole and Neil for being a part of this lawsuit, but I also have to thank the tens of thousands of advocates who have been involved in this fight for decades, including with us here today, Jody James, and of course Joe Fernandez for the Minorities for Medical Marijuana. This fight is not over, but this fight every single day is a step closer that we all know is needed for federal legalization. I know they will be happy to share their stories and speak with you all further. So before we close, I'd like to take any questions.
Can you talk about the significance of the day?
Yes, so of course today is 420. Which is known by medical marijuana activists and people in the industry. This is a day which we are starting to work forth, again, on legalization. And for my advocates, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding and remembrance, the reason why it's 420 is it used to be a police call on marijuana. And so it was the 420 for possession of marijuana that was called on the police radios. So this is part of the protest to the discriminatory practices on the federal government and state governments back then on marijuana.
Are you aware of anybody being charged federally with lying on this or having their guns taken away because they've done one or the other?
Yeah, there's stories all over the country. I mean, we see this daily happening, that people are being arrested for either one, having lied on the form, or two, trying to the other way. So there are stories all the time about this all across our country. And let me tell you, as Commissioner of Agriculture, this one issue, this one question, I am asked daily across our entire state. It is an issue that transcends partisan politics, issue that transcends just marijuana patients, but people. I even had a security officer who came up to me last week after one of my press conferences, who asked me point blank that he is a security officer, but he has severe pain from PTSD, but he is afraid to get his medical marijuana card because he's a security officer and has to carry a gun for his job. So patients And individuals all across our state are having to make, and across the country are having to make these decisions every single day to either apply for the medical marijuana card, potentially lose their VA benefits, potentially be fired from their jobs. We saw those stories across the entire state, even in the last couple of years, where teachers have been fired and people have been fired for their use of medical marijuana, which is legally recommended here in our state.
And do you have about a number of cases in the state? Dozens or hundreds?
As far as
the conflict, the looking to hold
thousands upon thousands
in Florida.
In Florida
At the
alone.
very least.
Yeah, I mean, we literally, if you look on any social media, you look at any conversation that I have, it literally comes up almost daily in my job.
And do you see more of one than the other? Is it gun owners looking for a medical marijuana card, or is it medical marijuana patients looking to purchase a gun?
You know, quite honestly, I hear more from our medical marijuana patients that want to be able to legally purchase a firearm for their own personal protection or for whatever, you know, for hunting or for whatever the reason is. We do get a lot also on the other side, but I think that if I had to go a 2-to-1 ratio, I would say medical marijuana patients more so than gun owners.
What is the procedure, I guess, if somebody has a medical marijuana card and they want to get a concealed weapons permit? I guess they have to give up one or the other?
So here's the one of the questions that I get asked all the time. And so I have said very clearly, and I've said it on the record, that I have both cards. I oversee the concealed weapons permitting program in the state of Florida. And so it's Florida statutes that dictate the Florida concealed weapons program. And I do not see, there's a sort of gray area, but I am not interpreting that as a prohibition of giving somebody their concealed permit in Florida based on a medical marijuana. One, we won't know. There's no way it's protected information. And the Department of Health also does not know if you are a concealed carry permit holder, because that too is protected information. So the issue has always been the national permits to carry and also the national forms to purchase guns. Yes, sir?
So just to piggyback on that, in Florida, have there been issues, for example, with people who get pulled over by the police and they have both? Or not, because of the Florida statute?
No.
Does that come up?
It does. And in fact, I think I saw an arrest even recently of somebody who had a gun and marijuana in their possession. So it's not even so much the cards, but it's the gun in their possession and marijuana in their possession. They then get charged with both.
And just one more side question. What city is the plaintiff Nicole Hansel from?
Miami.
Miami. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So the problem arises when there's a firearm and marijuana legally with somebody who has a medical marijuana card.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not the car they're going to get trouble for, but maybe is that flower marijuana?
It's all marijuana.
Oils,
They don't distinguish between.
gummies?
There's no distinction in any law as far as the type of delivery mechanism of the medicine. It is just marijuana possession.
Forget the question. Is flower available
In Florida?
medically?
Yes.
Is that last worst case kind of scenario, or that's
Every patient is different. Every patient is different on what works for them, what doesn't work for them. Some patients, especially those that are a little bit older, may know the flower form, from maybe back in their days in the 60s and 70s. But so they are more familiar and comfortable with flower as opposed to potentially the vapes or the gummies or even the oils. But every patient is different, which is why it is so important for the medical program to have all of the opportunities of delivery mechanisms available. So that way that a patient can see what works for them. Sometimes ingestion is better, sometimes oils are better. Again, every patient is just different. Their DNA is different, their symptoms are different, their ailments are different, and that's why it's so important that we have the cross-section of different types of products available.
Then you have two issues here. You have typically a liberal issue of marijuana, conservative issue of the Second Amendment right. You're putting those together, and some would say this is political for you as you're running for governor and you're looking to win over Republicans who hold the Second Amendment dear, and as well as liberals who hold their medical marijuana rights dear. What do you say to those who are saying this is a political stunt for you?
Not at all. If anybody wants to go back to my 2018 announcement video, My announcement video talked about the overregulation of marijuana and the underregulation of guns. That was my 2018 announcement video. This is something that I have been talking about literally for 4+ years. Unfortunately, we were dealing with a pandemic, and that was a major priority to making sure that all hands on deck of getting our state through the pandemic. As soon as we've seen now the numbers going down, people are getting back to normal lives, we felt that this was the right time to make sure that we launched the lawsuit. This is an issue, and for people to understand too, that this is a way to also protect people. Because what's happening is that, one, medical marijuana users are doing one of a couple of things. Either one, they're not buying the guns because they know that they can't get to the forms, or two, that they're actually saying no on the forms and now potentially putting themselves in a federal felony for relying on a federal form, or three, they're going to private sales. And so this way, this actually gives us more protections because now people can go through the proper forms, which means that they're going through the proper background checks. So this is actually going to be safer and more a protection for our society, because now patients can be able to legally obtain their firearms through a proper background check.
And again, this is state law, state medical marijuana laws conflicting with federal weapons, federal firearms laws.
Correct.
Because those background checks are done at the federal level.
That's correct.
Gotcha, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you so
All
much.
right. Thank you.
Nicole, or could we get one of the plaintiffs who might?
You can get them after.
We're fine, thank you so much.
If they're okay with it.
Perfect. Yes.
Be good,
Oh,
let
let
me
me
just get them up to the podium.
Thank you for being here.
Ms. Reed,